be open to trying new things, be open to trying new things and not allowing a particular sport to intimidate you. If it's something you feel yourself gravitating to explore it, give it a chance. Kind of give yourself the opportunity to grow with it. A lot of times we see a thing, we think about the danger because we're doing safety first, right? And we're saying no. And so we already are kind of, blocking ourselves from maybe perhaps a wonderful experience or a wonderful skill set.
Greetings and welcome to the Elevated Flo Podcast. The Elevated Flo Podcast spotlights elite and everyday female athletes over 40, sharing how they elevate their game and their flow in sports, wellness, and life. These are powerful stories of strength, resilience, wisdom, and inspiration to help women stay active, age strong, and pass the torch to the next generation. I have a special guest with me today, Miss Rose Thompson. How are you today?
I am blessed. I am super, super happy to be here with you. And I'm looking forward to getting into what's next for us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And I am excited to have you with me and excited
Thank
about
you.
this wonderful conversation that we're going to have today. So let me go ahead and give you a formal introduction. Okay, Miss Rose Thompson is a dynamic individual who is passionate about connecting people with nature and helping them develop outdoor skills. She is a visionary community engagement leader who enjoys creating outdoor opportunities for others, including tent camping 101, urban hiking, beginner kayaking, relationship building, and volunteer leadership training. Building legacy is her quote, building legacy with fun in nature. Is her mission statement. She believes that open access to nearby nature experiences and green spaces should exist without barriers for every community, no matter what their diversity is. She currently serves as the community engagement leader for the Trinity Coalition Conservation Board and chairs the governing board for TC Paddle Sports at Panther Island. Rose is also the founder of the Legacy Women's Virtual Roundtable, which is a women's support group that addresses the changing needs of women today. Additionally, she serves as the senior administrator and volunteer leadership trainer for the Black Women Who LLC of the Dallas-Fort Worth chapter, where she supports over 1,000 women. Rose is an ACA-certified kayak instructor and frequently leads groups and community tours. Her dedication to advocating for people and commitment to relationship building has led to many partnerships with well-known businesses and vendors in the DFW area. Professionally, Rose has a background in IT and is a certified MS technical trainer. She has provided software application training for government and private entities. Please help me welcome to the Elevated Flo Podcast, Ms. Rose Thompson.
Yay! I have to give myself a round of applause because that was long. That was a lot. It's always different when you're hearing it read back to you. Anyways, thank you so much, Flo, for having me here today. I really
Absolutely.
am looking forward to get into this conversation with you.
Absolutely. So we're just going to hop right in.
All right, let's go.
Outdoors,
Kayaking.
hiking, canoe, camping, all of the things. When would you say was at what age did you start with the outdoor or playing any kind of sports?
So I think doing the outdoor and sports, early age, I would say it all kind of started with my mom, my parents. My dad was military, and so he was used to doing the camping thing and the hiking thing. And, my mom also loved nature, and she would frequently take us on hikes.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I didn't know we were going on hikes. I thought we were just walking through the forest,
Mm-hmm.
And what I also didn't know is that those trips through the forest was her way of entertaining us. That was her
Mm,
way of getting us to have, connectivity with nature so that she could have a little peace herself, don't have to necessarily be stuck in the house with the kids, so to speak. There were things that we could do that were, at nominal cost or no
mm.
cost. And so we made that a regular habit of getting out in nature. And so I would have to say that's where nature loving kind of started for me. But when you talk about sports, most times we don't think about kayaking and hiking. We think about running, we think about football, basketball. But, even recently we've seen dance added to the Olympics, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
I've
dance
been
is
talking
also a
about that.
form
Yeah.
of, yeah, sports. So I'm going to say that was my early introduction. When I started hiking a little more, early age, early 20s, college students getting together for picnics, we would go hiking,
Hmm.
different groups getting people together to go to the mountains for an event, just to share some nature experiences and going hiking. And so leading hiking groups, leading outdoor events started for me more assuredly right around the early 20s.
Okay. Okay. So did you play any other like traditional sport growing up?
Thank you. I did. I ran track for a little
Okay.
while, and I did it because I was good at it. But I didn't. I was never a competitor. In other words,
Mm,
I didn't take it to the next level. I was more interested in the arts, and I was more interested in the relationship part of it. And so I kind of, shied away from the more organized sports in that respect. So, true athlete at heart. But if you're looking at my stats, you're not gonna find them in traditional sports. Yeah.
okay. It's always interesting to hear people's background and where they started and the things that they can kind of look back at and say, well, this is where my love for this started, or, I was introduced to something. Because when you were talking, I was thinking about you saying your mom taking you on hikes and everything. My dad used to take us on hikes, and my mom used to take us walking through the neighborhood. And it was like at
Nice.
night, and it was like
Nice.
she would say, don't talk. Let's listen to the sounds of nature, the sounds of the city. And then we would
Wow.
come back home and we would talk about, okay, I heard a horn blow, or I heard a bird, or, we would talk about the
Right.
different sounds that we heard and everything.
Nice.
But it's so interesting, even in reflecting back to that and thinking about my dad taking us hiking and stuff like that. I never, and we'll get into this because it's so prevalent to Black people or people of color being in nature and not
Yes.
being introduced to it. And a lot of times it has to do with access, of course,
Hmm.
but I never even looked at some of the things that I like to do as like, it's not traditionally a Black sport. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Right.
oh, I was
Absolutely
introduced to
not.
something, I love it, I do it. And then I find other people that do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes just so happens to be, it ain't a whole lot of Black people, but so
And
that's
that's the
interesting
truth.
to say.
That's the
Yeah,
truth. It's mostly, you don't typically see a lot of us claiming these as, sports for ourselves, or even not only not being introduced, but even just engaging in it in a way with pride. We're still kind of feeling our way through, when you talk about access to it. It was always there. It was
right, right,
always available. It just wasn't accessible to us, you know?
right. Absolutely.
So one more thing, and then I wanted to say my grandmother was also very instrumental in, my background with just outdoorism and nature loving. My grandmother loved birds, and so
Mm,
frequently early mornings we would rise early when we were with her, which was often, particularly on the weekends. But we would rise early to feed the birds, and
mm.
she would name them. And so she taught us to love nature with respect to being able to name the birds. And
I love that.
it was a bit of a game, it was a bit of a game for the grandchildren. If you didn't get up early, before the
Mm.
crack of dawn, then you didn't get to feed the birds. And that was a big treat, to be with grandma early in the morning when no one else is awake but the birds.
That
That
is
was a
really cool.
mhm.
That's really cool. And you know what? Another thing that does when you name animals or, it really gives them more of a human, or not, I shouldn't say human, a living being, value the living being that they are.
Yes.
Because sometimes when you don't name things or put labels on them, then you have this detachment from it and then might not
Yes, I get
respect
that.
it as a part of nature. You know what I'm saying? So
I
to
do.
name things, that's pretty cool. That's
Yeah,
pretty
we
cool.
were the birds was a big part of my upbringing. Just, and even saying that sounds a little foreign, but it's the truth. It's what it was. I would always pride myself on, I can name these birds. We would go different places and I would start looking for the birds in nature.
Mm,
So she did teach us, as you said, to love nature and respect nature, and
right.
particularly just looking at the birds and the beauty that they bring and the value that they have in our ecosystem. So, yep. Thank
So
grandma.
my so my dad and I just came. We were out driving and he looked outside and he saw some birds on the sidewalk. He was like, "That's the first time I've seen some pigeons here."
Okay.
Like, really? So since you've been here for a while, are you familiar with the grackles?
So, I hadn't paid much attention to them, and I
Okay.
don't see them. I do see them down at the river, but yeah, I don't really pay and that kind of sounds funny, but you know, I mean, all of the birds and are valuable, right? And so, but there's just
Talking
some
to
of
some
them that are
people
little.
from here though, and they were like, "What is that?" I looked up the official name. That's why. So maybe
That's what
that
they
might
call.
be unfamiliar. And so they were like, "Oh, those are crows," and I was like,
That's right.
crows and
I was
grackles,
gonna say
and they make these crazy noises, but I
crazy
absolutely
sounds.
love those birds. They have like iridescent
They
feathers, and they're
do. They
just
do.
so
They do.
beautiful. But
And there's
anyway,
different variations of them as well. And so the ones that I would see most are not as big as the ones you're talking about. Those are really, but they have some, they're called sterlings, and it's
okay.
very similar, but they're smaller.
Hmm.
So the crows are really, really big. They're not, I mean,
But
they're
the ones that I'm
interesting.
talking about aren't even crows.
They're
That's what
not,
they were talking about,
they're
crows. No,
not,
they're
they're
small.
not. They're
They're actually
smaller.
smaller than pigeons too. Yeah.
They're smaller, but they're really beautiful as well.
Yeah.
And so we spent a lot of time feeding them down at the river. I don't know if you noticed any while you were there over the weekend when we did the little bit, but yeah, they were around. They're very noisy.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
They're very noisy.
Yes.
Yeah,
When I was in Austin one time, when I looked it up, I was with my son and they were talking about, I saw just different videos. I know I'm like digressing, but excuse me. I like
that's
birds.
okay.
They
Okay,
were
see, we have
saying
something
that
in
there are
common.
people, there are people that go out like at 5 o'clock in the morning and they have these lasers that kind of scare them off, and these clappers that make really, really loud noises because there's so many of them in the Austin downtown area, and they
Okay.
don't want them like pooping all over the ground and they be on people's cars. I think they're beautiful. I love the sound, but anyway, I just learned a lot about grackles because I hadn't seen them before moving to Texas. So anyway,
See, yes.
moving on.
If you're listening right now and you're thinking, Coach Flo, I know I need to get moving, but I don't know where to start. Or you've been moving, but you feel stuck. Maybe you hit a plateau. This message is for you. I created a 21-day Get Active, Stay Active challenge just for women like you. It's simple, it doesn't take much time, and it's doable even if you can only work out at home. This challenge is designed not only to help you build strength and momentum, it's designed to build confidence and consistency without feeling overwhelmed. Every day, You'll get clear guidance and small, powerful steps that add up to big results. By the end of the 21 days, you'll not only feel stronger, you'll know exactly how to keep going. So if you're ready to take that step, join me. Click the link in the description to join the challenge. Your future self will thank you for it. Now let's get back to the episode.
I actually love how you merge leadership, nature, and community. What first inspired your love for helping others experience it?
I think it starts with, your own unique passion and your own unique flavor that you receive from nature. So for me, that's where it starts. It's just, I don't know, I'm doing a thing. I love it. I like it. I want you to love it and like it too.
Right.
So that's where it starts from. And then, taking it a bit further, particularly if it's something that maybe we're not as familiar with, you're not as familiar with kayaking or familiar with maybe camping, in a tent,
Mhm.
maybe you're not as familiar, with hiking. In the urban area, right? So for me, it is finding what is not only unique to myself, but also what brings us together. And to me, finding nature experiences and introducing nature experiences that I, personally love and have, experienced. I want others to have that and share that experience. And what happens is you end up building a really strong connection. You have the opportunity not just to learn, but to build on relationships. And so I think that's what I find most unique. It really is all about doing things together. And
Yeah,
this gives us an opportunity to do that when we share nature experiences.
absolutely. So what age do you remember being when you first went camping in a tent?
So my first camping in a tent was elementary school.
Okay.
So I was young, and the schools that I went to, that was a regular thing. They would
Mm,
take you camping.
okay.
Yeah, we would go
That's
camping,
awesome.
and so that's how I had the first experience doing tent camping was through school. Typically, my dad owned a tent. It was green because it was military. We didn't own just regular, tents that you
Right.
might buy right now from a sporting goods store or something. But all of his gear, we would pull it all out and we would, put it together and we would kind of play around with it and have him to talk about what these pieces were. But to your point, being introduced to tent camping was early. And every year I looked forward to going. And then as my parents began to build greater relationships in our community with the churches, with other
Mhm.
programs, we began to I began to go do that kind of thing a little bit more because there were other opportunities that offered it
Okay.
besides the school system. And this
Okay.
was public school system.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
I think the first time I went tent camping, actually, because I know, and we could talk about this, how we met, and then we just went camping together. We met because you were doing a learn to row with the rowing club that I work with, and they put me in contact with you, and I'm like, yeah, about Black women who, and because of Tanya Walker, which we all know, she
Right.
was like my first guest on the podcast, but you had the Dallas Fort Worth chapter. And so even though I wasn't able to come because conflict or whatever, I saw your post on TikTok or Instagram
Okay.
about
Yeah. TikTok,
camping.
Instagram.
So we just went on the camping trip, two
Yay.
weekends ago, tent
Yes, 2 weekends
camping.
ago, tent camping.
Yes, and that was such an amazing experience. It was. And I know when we went around in the circle, we talked about if it was our first time and going tent camping and all of that. And my first camping was also elementary school, but it wasn't even in a tent. We were like outside, it was
Mhm.
open. So
Okay.
I didn't even think about like animals, and it was called African Camp. I
Okay.
don't know what the organization was that was associated with,
Interesting.
but somehow we, put tarp down and did the whole thing. But yeah, we slept under the stars. So that
Mhm.
was my first memory of
Okay.
camping.
Wow. Wow,
And then, of
that's
course,
really
like
unique.
it is now knowing what I know about the animals and stuff out there, but they
Right.
probably had it set up where, people are standing guard or whatever. But
Relatively
like I was
safe and
right,
protected.
right.
Mm,
Absolutely. But and then I also went camping in tents when I was in well, no, those were cabins when I was in elementary school with my church.
okay,
But
yeah.
as a foster care and adoption social worker, every summer, like you just shared, because of your experience, you want other people
Mhm.
to experience it. And when I was a social worker, every summer, I'm like, every child needs to go camping
To
at
go
least once in their
camping.
life. Yeah.
Why
So
do you
I would
think every
all
child needs to go camping though? Because to me, that's you to say that out loud, you get all kinds of reactions. Some
mm,
people are welcoming, but most are not as welcoming. They don't want to be subject to the outdoor elements and feel unprotected or feel
mm,
unsafe. It's very different from being in your home.
mhm.
And, even if it were a cabin situation, if you're out in, not even deep woods, I mean, you could be in a state park. It's not
Right.
always so welcome. They don't want to be out there. They don't feel safe. But I was curious to hear why you felt like, it was important for people to have that experience because I feel the same way.
Yeah, like you said, it's because I had such a great experience with it, and you really do get to connect with nature
Hmm.
and reflect on how you're feeling inside, and you're like outside of the noise of the world. Like you're getting away. And
Okay.
back then
Yes.
we didn't have to worry about cell phones and all of that. So I love when they have camps now where they don't allow that.
Mm,
Excuse me, but I just believe that children should be able to connect with nature and have that
yes.
exposure and experience. And
Yes.
especially being that I was working with foster care, children in foster care, I feel like that is a place where healing can take place and they can find peace. It takes them out of not just the city, but mentally and physically, it could take them
Mm,
out of their situation, whatever it may be. And so,
absolutely.
like, your mind goes somewhere else. Like, even when I see the
That
water,
part.
it's like your mind goes somewhere else. It's like you were really removed from reality almost. So I talk
Yes.
about that with visiting the water. And when I'm on the water, even if you try to think about other things, it's like your mind, it just does something. So
Wanders, your
just for
mind
people to have
wanders.
that experience, I think every child should experience that. And then, okay, if they don't like it, then, they find something else that they do. But to have that as a child and then
Yeah.
decide if they want to continue to do that as an adult and also, pass that on to their children. I just think that every child should have that experience. It's very peaceful. I mean, it's away from, okay, it could be in a state park or whatever, but it's
It's
things
still
that
away.
aren't man-made.
Made. Yes.
That's why I'm
Right.
so amazed by the ocean, even going to the beach. It's like, okay, there's a lot of man-made lakes here in Texas, but when you go out on the ocean and you like, this is all God.
You're in a whole nother world. You in a whole different ecosystem. You are not in
Absolutely.
control. You are not in
Absolutely.
charge when you go on the
Absolutely.
ocean. Right? No.
So when you get that pushback, do you have like family? Do you ever take your family or close friends camping? And how has that experience been? Do people
I
embrace it
love
or they
it.
like, nah, that's your thing?
Yeah, there's a few that you will say, nah, that's your thing. But for my family, it was a way not just to vacation, but it was also a way to do something out of the ordinary. It was easier to go to a movie. It might have been easier to do some other, recreational thing, like even a traditional sport. We like to play flag football. That was one of the things we did because it was less contact, all that kind of thing.
Right.
But I wanted to keep my friends. I wanted to ensure that my family had that uninterrupted time. And so that was the reason we began to do it. But it was
Okay.
also the exploration that most would have as a first
Mhm.
time experience because they had never been camping or they had never hiked. And
Mhm.
so became a quest to go different places and to do it periodically throughout the year. So we would make it a point to do it maybe 2 to 3 times a year with family. I did it more often with some close friends. But the thing I would say that's also important, and we touched on it earlier, we were talking about our love for birds and nature. It's important for me, the relationship piece is important for me to understand that we don't just have relationships, or we don't only have relationships with one another,
Mhm.
you know, as beings, human beings, but we have relationships with the earth, with
Absolutely.
our animals, with, other living things like the forest and, the things that live in the forest. And so it's important for me, the conservation piece, to help us to
Mhm.
understand if we're going to have the best value out of life, we need to kind of, consider the whole.
Yeah, I like that. So you describe yourself as building legacy with fun in nature. What does that mean to you? Legacy, and how does fun play into that?
Yeah, I think, I like what you said in, part of your maybe mission statement or objective with the flow, passing the baton. I saw somewhere where you had talked about that. And legacy to me is about not only establishing ourselves in the
Mhm.
community, but it's also about showing the value that we bring when we connect to others, when we pass on the things that matter to the next generation. And it's also about reaching back to those who have come before us so that
Mhm.
we can build strong relationships. So it's the reaching back, and it's also the reaching forward. So
Absolutely.
building legacy in nature has everything to do with, taking different ones out to explore that, life is bigger than just, us. And
Mhm.
it matters more when you can see it in action, being
Right.
in nature and seeing that there's a particular harmony that works together to build, what we call life. And then in addition to that, it's about not just making it about health and wellness or learning new skills or survival, even, which is really important, being able to survive. But it's also about, seeing that these things can be fun,
Yes. Yes.
just fun, like you said, sleeping under the stars. It's fun to challenge ourselves in these ways. It's fun, to see that I actually can do a little more than I gave myself credit for. It's fun, to see others learn these skills and have these experiences. And so, I have fun watching others appreciate nature.
Yeah.
It's fun watching others connect for the first time and then walk away with new relationships. And so that's kind of where it is for me. Building legacy in nature with fun has everything to do with just all the things that I love doing, but enjoying it while I'm doing it, helping others to enjoy it as well.
Yeah, I thought it was fun going on the night hike or during the camping experience, and just hearing other people that had never experienced those type of things before. It is exciting to
Yeah, it's
see
exciting.
if they like it or like how they respond to it. And even for people that had never fished before, that's
Hmm.
something where it's like, oh, okay, that's something that you can do locally and don't have to go
Yes.
camping necessarily to do.
Yes.
So to
And they
actually
learn
see
to
people,
own it. They learn to own their fun. They learn to
yeah,
own those experiences and take them other places, really just kind of, find space to do it for themselves. And so
right,
that's legacy right there happening in motion when you can do that.
right,
So,
right. How would you define fun? Because, something that you think is fun or I think is fun, people are like, nothing about what y'all talking about sound fun to me.
right, right. I think that's always the case. People don't always know that they're having fun.
Right.
They don't always feel like they're having fun. It's like we out here and it's dark and we don't have enough light and this isn't fun. But then when you get home, oh, we did this and it was, yes, you had fun. You earned some utils that excited you in a way
Right.
that made you know that one, you were out of your element, but two, you were safe enough that you would actually do it again. So sometimes you don't know that you like a thing until you really give it a chance. And so you're right. Everybody doesn't see night hiking as fun. But again, you're being introduced to it for the first time. You don't really always know what fun is until you have enough of it. And you're like, oh,
That's
I want to
true.
do that again. It grows on you. It kind of
Right,
grows on
right.
you. So that's how I see it. It grows on people, these outdoor experiences, and they want to repeat them. They want to do it. They want to introduce it to someone else.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Like, okay, Judy, you should try this. And it's true, they might not necessarily know that they're having fun. There is a type of enjoyment, fulfillment, and people might
Yes.
not necessarily define that as fun. I've always said for myself, it doesn't take much for me to have fun. I don't have to be like actively doing something and smiling and like, this is fun. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I could just be sitting on the back patio with my dad talking and looking at the grass grow.
Right. I thought of something when you said that. I thought of people who get on roller coasters for a
Mm,
thrill. While they're doing it, some will go, oh, this is fun. Wee. And then you have others that'll be like, oh, and then you're like, oh, that was fun. So sometimes it's the after, dawning of we had a good time. We enjoyed ourselves. So
absolutely.
yeah,
Yes, reflecting back on it. That's a good way to think of it. Yeah. Okay. So you have worn many hats, and probably, well, dude, you still wearing many hats. You had to take
I
one off to
do.
come on here and, you know.
Yeah.
So what you've done, you're IT professional, trainer, community leader, kayak instructor. How have these experiences shaped your mission of connecting people to nature?
I think, and I love that question because, it really kind of shows a myriad of ways that we can connect with others. And so for me, it all stems from the love that I have for the things that I like to do. But in terms of wearing many hats, I realize you might connecting with you over the rowing, the Learn to Row event. It might be, something else in another setting, like the hiking. But one thing I like to do, and I really feel like is, uh, a badge of honor in a sense for me that I wear is that the relationships that we build in these different experiences, they move on and they grow, they mature to stronger, they end up being a part of a community. I like to build these relationships in incremental ways so that maybe perhaps, we still having fun. Are we still
Mm-hmm.
having fun? We can build a community. And that's what it's about. It's about recognizing that we need our community. And sometimes you have to start from scratch. And it's one thing, it's one relationship upon another. That's how I would describe it.
I know a lot of times people compartmentalize the different aspects of their lives, especially as professionals. Have you ever tried to introduce kayaking or outdoors to the professionals or the IT community that you've worked with?
Absolutely. And some of them have kayaked with me, before on different trips. And even today in the meeting that I came out of, I was like, hey, I got a kayaking 101 class on Saturday. Any takers, we can sign you up today. I think it is part of the way we build best when we take the things that we love and, maybe even kind of introduce it in another setting, something that might be professional. It's a way to break the ice. It's the way to share bits of ourselves with others. It's a way to learn and grow together. And I think once people see that, it's like, I may not kayak with you, but I'd love to see what you're doing. I would like to support you. So it's
Yeah.
that kind of bridge to building the kind of community that we want to not just live in, but to experience. So I do. I love the cross pollination that happens when we move from one thing and show, we're all kind of fluid in that respect. So it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be isolated. My life doesn't have to be so compartmentalized that I can't share pieces of me or pieces of what I love in other settings. In fact, we would be surprised more if we took those opportunities to lead into other areas. You end up growing a community that you really need and always wanted. I'll say one more thing about this. That's to me what I just described in some ways is the way communities of old were established. They were not just isolated. It wasn't just the school or the church or the bank, or the corner store. I mean, these were all relationships. We knew the owner at the store. We knew the banker sometimes. We frequented these places and we built relationships. And because of it, when we went home, they were a part of our community. And so I feel like, the cross-pollination that I mentioned has to continue to happen. And it does take us out of our comfort zone a little bit to do it, but it's the value and the residual from it is well worth it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Now, thinking about that, so you do the cross pollination. Would you say that you knew, even though you loved it and you've been involved in
Yeah.
outdoor spaces for a long time, being in IT, are you surprised or did you carve this path towards like being a professional in the outdoor space? Or is it like, I would have never guessed that this is what I would be doing?
It's the latter. I would have never
Okay.
guessed that I would own it in the fashion that I have to say that I'm a professional in these disciplines or that I'm an expert, considered an expert in some of these disciplines. And again, unfortunately, it goes back to people of color did not ascribe most to these kinds of roles and jobs.
Right, right,
We saw park rangers, but we didn't know how they became a park ranger. Those were not
right,
areas or careers that we were most introduced to. I always loved nature. I always, dreamed of doing things in nature. But at the time, that was not something I saw very, within my reach. And so it
right.
wasn't until as a middle after, doing even the things in my 20s, as I said, doing all those things and having all those experiences, I began to build relationships around those events. But it wasn't until more recently that I started to just put more energy into building relationships, not just because of these opportunities in nature, but even beginning to own it as a craft,
Mm,
owning it as a professional. Before I ascribed more to the training, the technical trainer and product trainer and customer service
mhm,
training and all that, which I loved. And though all the cross pollination was going on, it wasn't until more recent in the past 6 years that I began to own this. So it's
mhm.
new. It's very new. People that know me and that have been a longtime friend or have a long time relationship would say she's always been doing this, but
Right, right,
not
right,
to this level where I'm
right,
saying, hey, call on me if you want an outdoor experience, call on me
right.
if you want to learn how to kayak, come with me if you want to, learn some basics in tent camping. So now I'm saying that more freely and boldly, with confidence, where before it was like, hey, y'all want to go do this or that? And we would just go do it. But yeah, it's kind of fun. That's fun too.
Yeah, it is, right? That's interesting because I would say that that is my experience as well. I would have never, I mean, like rowing, come on. I've saw it before, didn't have a clue how to get involved. I was at the beach in Los Angeles all the time. Didn't think
See,
anything about getting in a boat as far as rowing is concerned. Yeah, I
as
thought
far as
about getting on a
rowing,
yacht or something like
oh,
that. But to think that you can actually have a career, like you said, in outdoor spaces. I appreciate you sharing that information with me
yes,
about becoming certified to go
yes,
into more depth into outdoor careers. And like you said, you have these, what do they call them at the schools where they have like career days and stuff
Career
like that. Now
days,
that I'm
yes.
saying this, it's like really making me think like this is something that we do need to not just get more Black and brown kids involved in non-traditional sports, but also in the outdoor industry. There's so
Yes,
much there. We have the Olympics and all of these things, these different sports and things going on. And people are always looking at what's going on in the forefront. But there are so many opportunities that happen on the back end, training
yes,
centers, and, they're doing these non-traditional sports, but there's people that have to set all of this stuff up. And there are
that's right.
lucrative careers that people can actually go into. And I believe that we need to, expose more Black and brown people to that. So that's going to be a project that we need to work on, or
We will be
somehow
working on it. Yes.
something, because that just came to me like, what? Yeah, I would have
Yep.
never even known,
Yep.
even
Yep.
the
That's
information you shared with me about the outdoor certification and all of that. It's like
yes. Yes. Yes.
the
It's
guy that
important.
came to the camp that was talking about the Buffalo Soldiers, like
Yes.
he got a job and,
Poitier. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So we
that's
definitely,
important.
absolutely. So you are ACA certified kayak instructor and an avid hiker. Can you tell me what the ACA certification means and how these sports have shaped your sense of self mentally, physically, and spiritually?
Yes. So ACA is an organization. It's not just, it's nationally known, but it's also internationally known in many circles for providing certifications for kayaking, for paddleboarding, for canoeing at different levels. And so there's expert levels. In fact, the Olympics that host kayaking and whitewater sports, rafting is also something they certify in. So the instructor level, which is where I am, in order to have the credence and the credibility for being able to operate as an instructor, they have certain requirements that you meet. And it's just a nice way to say, this person meets these criterion to be able to
Right.
not only paddle, but to teach others to paddle in different disciplines. It also means that as an instructor, I can also train other instructors, which is part of my mission to get others out there, not just learning the basics of kayaking or enjoying paddle sports, meaning supboards as well. So paddle, perhaps a paddle board or paddle in a canoe, which requires different disciplines, different types of crafts, of course, different boats, but also different equipment,
Mhm.
different tools that you need. It also means being ACA certified that you are designated as a person for safety. Should something
Mhm.
happen, an incident, an emergency, that you are qualified and understand what necessary steps to take to help remedy a problem before it happens, but also if in case there is some, first aid emergency, that you know how to step in and provide aid. So it is a nice certification to have because there is training involved to get that.
Mhm.
Lots of different training. So I have several certifications. The kayak instructor one is the highest one that I have. I'm actually going to be taking another kayak certification in March. And so I'm looking forward to getting that. And that'll be more swift water.
Mm.
And so I had an opportunity to get a swift water certification, but the day that we were doing it, it was so cold and I chickened out and I thought this water is moving so fast. And while I still had to perform in order to get my certification and I was encouraged to go on and do the rest, I said, you know what? Can you sign off on this at a later date? Because this water is cold. And so having said that, you have to also understand, the weather. You have to
Mhm.
understand water temperatures, the atmospheric temperatures. You have to have some level of knowledge on that to make the kind of judgment calls as to when to paddle, where to
Right.
paddle, and what level of experience is needed in, a particular area. So all of that comes with being ACA certified. I am certified to lead tours. And again, to provide guidance and tour guidance and safety. And that's actually positions on the water, whether you're
Okay.
leading, whether you're, serving as a safety, which is someone who would more than likely be at the end or perhaps in the middle. Just like with hiking, you have your hiking guide, but then there should be others stationed throughout the hiking group, particularly if it's a larger group, to ensure that everybody's safe, that everybody stays together, that people understand the risks, because there's always
Right.
risks when you're in nature and you're doing nature-centered activities. So yeah, I'm looking forward to, sharing more with the community, your community, about becoming ACA certified and just other certifications that come along with water sports.
And it's so interesting that you say that about, the safety and all of these the positions with hiking and kayaking. And I think a lot of times, and it speaks to what you were talking about as far as being certified and actually knowing what it is that you're doing. Because a lot of times, people just kayak and they just feel like, okay, they don't understand that background that I was talking about. Like, oh, we need a tour guide, we need someone in the middle, some in the back, and everybody serves a different
Yes.
role
Yep.
and responsibility in that tour. But like I said, people don't think about that if they're on vacation and they're just out there like, oh, we're in a kayak, and it's like, no, there's different
There's some
parts and
dangers.
structure and absolutely danger. As a rowing coach, we are required to have a wind app, a lightning app, and the weather app on our phones.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
it's interesting because it's starting to get really windy, and I was supposed to go rowing this morning. And I looked
Okay.
at the wind app because last night when I was training my middle school kids, we were like, nope, we're not going on the water. So we had a land practice. So this morning I was like, it's a little windy. Let me check
Yeah.
my wind app. So I
There you
text the coach
go.
like, are we going to be on the water? She was like, no, I was just getting ready to put a message out that we're going to have a land practice. I was like, okay, I'll row at home by myself.
That's right.
But it's true. It's like there's certain criteria about how cold, or what the temperature rather is,
Mm-hmm.
the air temperature and the water temperature, the mixture, how much it has to equal in order for
Yes.
you to go out and be safe. Because you couldn't say, oh, yeah, I don't like the cold doesn't bother me. But it's like, if you fall in that water and you're like traumatized, you can freeze up, get hypothermia really bad.
You
So all
can.
of those things play a part in actually being a professional
Yes.
in the outdoor sports. Yeah.
Yes. Being knowledgeable, like you mentioned, in terms of who to take on the water, how we put them on the water, what level of exposure do we give them to the activity or the sport, how long we keep them on the water, and whether or not it's safe to even do it to begin with. Really, that's where the training and the professionalism, the expertise come in. Because as you said, I mean, you can rent a kayak, many times can pay just to do a rowing class or course, perhaps. But, it's not something that you would do in unprotected in scenario. It's something you want
Right.
to do when it's protected.
Right.
But yeah, I feel you on that. I'm always cautioning different ones. My team takes people out for hiking and I'm saying, watch the temperature. And they're going, I'm like, I'm telling you, it happens even when you think it's safe.
Right. Right.
Incidences happen even when everything is perfect. So you have
Right.
to still be aware and be prepared. That's
Right.
what's that?
Prepared.
Remember our
Yes.
leave no trace principles? The
Yes.
first one
Yes.
is planning and preparing, because you
Yeah.
never know what's going to happen, because nature sometimes is unpredictable.
Very. Very. And like you said, it's unpredictable and it's dangerous. It's
And
dangerous,
it
whether
can
it's
be,
the
it
weather,
will,
it could be a rock that falls from the mountain or whatever,
exactly,
it's like anything can happen. So it's like, no,
it
you got to be
can.
prepared. Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
That's
I know
right.
our kids, they do not like when we have land practices and they're like, why can't we go on the water? And we're like, because I drove up and I see whitecaps.
That's right.
One of the girls came yesterday and she was like, oh, it looks like the ocean out there. I'm like, right, 'cause
Uh-huh.
we're not rowing in that.
Right.
Right. Not whitewater rowing. No.
That's it. Right. That's something. Wow. That's great.
So I know that the kids, sometimes it's so funny. I was thinking about my niece. We had a job, a work swim party,
Okay.
and she was just like, "Oh,
That sounds fun.
jumped in the pool," and it's like I was thinking to myself, "Oh, I didn't know she knew how to swim." She didn't, but she was just like fearless and jumped in, and then she was like flailing around, and we had to, rescue her. Same thing with my grandson. We went to the ocean. He just runs in the water. We like, "What are you doing?" Like, so yeah, you got to be safe, and that's with
That's
everything. We
right.
always talk about safety first.
Yes.
Safety first.
Yes. Safety
Safety
first.
first. Yeah.
That's
Even
it.
the most experienced people can get, caught off by nature. You had an
Yes, we
experience.
are. Yes.
Yeah.
We do. We can be caught off guard. And so we have to always practice safety first for ourselves, right? And then second for others, but actually even making sure that everyone is clear, crystal clear in what safety looks like, and how do we, maintain it, because you can be safe in one scenario and not in another. And so we want
Right.
to make sure that we're clear on that, as the leaders, as guides, and as trained professionals, so to speak. But even like you mentioned, your student that said, "Oh, it looks like white, like the ocean," bingo. We're
And
not
that
wrong in that.
safety, it can change in a matter of
It
minutes
can.
too, you know?
It can.
This
It can.
Yeah, so I like to talk about what we passing the torch to the next generation. I know we talked a lot about legacy and, passing, not just reaching back, reaching forward. What would you say to your teenage self at this
Yes.
time about how important it is to be involved in sports and how it would shape your life based on your experiences now?
Yes, I would say first off, be open to trying new things, be open to trying new things and not allowing a particular sport to intimidate you. If it's something you feel yourself gravitating to explore it, give it a chance. Kind of give yourself the opportunity to grow with it. A lot of times we see a thing, we think about the danger because we're doing safety first, right? Um, and we're saying no. And so we already are kind of, blocking ourselves from maybe perhaps a wonderful experience or a wonderful skill set and maybe even a career. And so that's the first thing I would say. I did enjoy running, even though I never moved on to the competitive level. I would do the competitive in the actual group or the organization. It was the track team, but I never competed. I would compete with the team, in practice, but,
Right.
and it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. I just didn't want to. I
Mm,
wouldn't give myself a chance. And
okay.
so I kind of wish that I had given myself a little more opportunity to do that, because it builds so much character. It builds, ourselves in ways we would never know. Now,
Yeah.
looking back, the hiking that I do and, just the stamina that I have, I always knew that I had it, but I never gave myself that opportunity to go forward. So I would say for a young person, find the thing that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And for me, running made me feel good. And then, allow yourself the opportunity to develop the disciplines to become not just better, but become the best that you can be. I think sometimes,
Mhm.
particularly people of color, children of color, they are afraid of being the best
Mm.
and they don't give themselves, and we don't give them an opportunity to learn how the discipline helps them to be the best. It's okay to be the best at something, and we don't have to feel bad because we're really good at a thing. We can celebrate one another. We can celebrate that the skill sets that can be built upon. And I think that helps us to really build a kind of healthy community. And so my younger self would appreciate that information right now.
Absolutely.
We just never know how things will turn out.
So any of you that are under 40 or teenagers that are listening to this, take heed, take
Yes,
heed.
take heed.
Well, you know that we focus on women 40 and over, and everyday athletes. What would you say to an older woman that says, you know what, I've never really had the outdoor experience. I feel like I'm too old. Like, I'm going to leave that to the kids. What would you say that they could do to start, and how important it can be to improve their life from here on out?
Yes, I think the first thing is the mindset. Our mindset has to be, inclusive in a way that allows whatever age we are to explore. So we want
Right.
to explore what's available. So that's the first thing, just having a mind to explore. Maybe there are certain risks that you're not willing to take right now. Maybe there's things that you didn't know that you could do, right? Exploring, having a mindset that's open enough to be able to explore new challenges. When it comes to sports, when it comes to taking on new skills, we have to first be willing, right? And then I think
Yep.
just finding a community, no matter what age you are, finding a community that will support you, trusting yourself and trusting your community. Having that relationship gives us the fortitude to be able to take small steps. So where do we start? I think we start with an open mind. I think finding a community helps us to explore areas that we probably never dreamed we could be a part of, but we are fully welcomed when we give ourselves a chance, when we, just take the time to try. I was going to say put one foot in front of the other, but to try. And so I think the easiest thing to do is walking. It doesn't have to be a fast walk. It could be a short walk, but just a little bit of walking and finding a community that would even support that. I like our communities to support beginners and everyone. And so we try to pay attention to different levels of agility, different levels of people's fitness. And so really giving them an opportunity to develop that confidence. So no matter what you want to try first, starting with the mindset and then community is what I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I always say that. Walking. Start, just walk. Just take a walk.
Just walk.
Just
Take
walk.
a walk.
Well, you know what, Rose? We could
What?
literally talk for hours.
We have a lot to talk
Literally
about.
talk.
And
We
so I
do.
look
We
forward
do.
to kicking back and talking for hours. Literally.
Yes,
We like
yes.
talking.
So
So
before we close out, I just want you to share where people can get in contact with you on social media, email, website, all of those things, if you could share that.
yes. So, there's a few different ways to get a hold of me and follow me. I would say, first off, definitely using IG for Black Women Who. I'm also on IG with Trinity Coalition. I'm also on IG with Legacy Lady _Rose. You can follow me there. I would also say, come check out Black Women Who's website. Yeah, definitely shoot me an email at Dallas at blackwomenwho.com if you want to get a hold of me through email. But most social media platforms, I'm on there, and I would love to connect with you. I would love to share more, not only of my story, but opportunities that you can get involved in.
Absolutely. And we didn't even touch on the legacy women. Like, seriously, I'm going to have you come back.
That's a whole
I'm going to
thing.
have you come back because
That's a
you know
whole
what?
thing.
It's the whole thing. Whew. Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off until this next time. This is Coach Flo
Yes.
signing off. Remember to find your zone and elevate your flow. Peace.
I love it. Peace. Thank you, Flo. All right.